We're going to work on creating a two-point perspective drawing for our sample puzzle cube part. And so just a quick review. Remember, our front view is going to be this view. When we rotate that part up 90 degrees, we get the top view. When we go back to the front view and we rotate it 90 degrees in this direction, we get the right side view. A couple other reminders. Remember, these lines are depth lines in the right side view. These lines in the front view are width lines. And so our width lines are going to go back to vanishing point number 1 in our perspective drawing. So I'll go ahead and write that up here by vanishing point 1. And our depth lines are going to go back to vanishing point 2. So on our template, we already have this first height line drawn. And so from there, we're going to be adding this depth line and this depth line. And so I'll get a straight edge. And from the bottom of that height line, I'll draw that depth line back to vanishing point 2. Right like that. And so we just drew this line and this line. Now I'm going to draw these two lines. These are width lines in the front view, and I'm going to draw those back to vanishing point number 1. So from this, we're going to have to start to think about proportion of our part. One block, we're going to go over about what looks like one block. And so it should be proportional to the height of our sketch there. And I'll go ahead and put a point, and I'm going to draw a straight line up. And that's going to block in that first surface of our front view. And so we have this surface blocked in right here. Now again, I'm going to have to use some proportion and think about, okay, maybe that's one block, that's 2 blocks, so maybe 3 blocks. All right, and so what I've done is just created some proportion to block out about where the end of this part should go. And so I'll draw a height line right here, and that's going to represent this line in my part. From there, I'm going to go ahead and draw this corner from this point back in the depth dimension back to vanishing point number 2. And then I can draw this line right here back to vanishing point number 1. So that's going to be this line on my part. From there, I'm going to go ahead and create this line on my part, and I'm going to do that from this point that I created. So I'm going to draw that width line, and it's going to go back to vanishing point number 1. So that's going to define this part of our object right here. From there, I'm going to estimate the length of this. Just looking at it proportionally, it looks like that box should end about right here. So I'm going to put a dot, and I'm going to draw a line straight up. And then I'm going to draw this point, which is right here. I'm going to draw that depth line back to vanishing point number 2. So that's the top surface of our part. I'm going to go ahead and erase these two lines so it's a little easier to see what we have. And I'm going to darken in these lines so you can see what we have. So with those lines darkened in, you can see this surface is complete on our part. From there, we're going to go ahead and go up in the height dimension to create our next block. So from this point here, I'm going to go up vertically in my height dimension. So I'll draw a construction line for that. And then again, I'll have to use some proportion to think about how high up does that block come to. So I'm going to put a point about right there. That looks proportionally about correct. And I will draw a vanishing point for that depth line back to vanishing point number 2. From there, I'm going to erase a little bit of these construction lines so they don't get confusing for me. And I'm going to draw this line and this line, those two width lines, back to vanishing point number 1. And I'll kind of erase these two height lines because I'm finished with those. And then again, I'll figure out about how proportionally what looks like about 1 block. I'll go ahead and put a line in for that, and I'll draw that depth line back to vanishing point number 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and darken in those lines. From the outside corner of this, I'm going to go ahead and draw this line now. That's going to be our line right here. So it's going to be a straight vertical line. Now I need to figure out where this part comes out. And so if I look over here, I have this point marked. So if I go straight down from there, I get a point about right here. So I'm going to draw a line back to our vanishing point for the width right across there, and that will define the bottom edge of our part. So the last two things I have to do is darken in those two lines. So we'll darken in this height line, and I'll darken in this height line. So once you have that done, we're finished with our perspective drawing, 2-point perspective for our sample puzzle cube part. Remember, you can go ahead and add some tonal shading to the part by adding a series of vertical lines to the front surface of the part. Once I have that shading done, I'll go ahead and erase some of these construction lines that are in the part so that we can clearly see our 2-point perspective.